course alignment and AI. How can artificial intelligence be used to enhance course alignment as well as having a successful course? I recently released this special infographic that talks about course alignment and AI. The important thing to see here is that course alignment is made of three distinct components: student learning objectives, assessment strategies, and instructional strategy. This is put together through the process of instructional design. I highly recommend is that you use backwards design. In this way, you first identify the level of results needed. This is your SLOs. Then you go through and determine the evidence of learning. What is needed in order to prove that the students have achieved those SLOs? This is the assessment strategy. And then finally, you plan the learning activities. So this is your instructional strategies or your pedagogy. Within each section, it's really important to understand the components of what's going on. So the SLOs, the student learning outcomes. Student learning outcomes are focused on the course topic. So this is specifically what do they need to know from this course specifically. A key part of that is that this is nested within the program goals. So that means that the SLO is nested within the course level outcomes. Those course level outcomes are nested within the program level outcomes. Those program level outcomes are then nested within general education level outcomes. Then those general education level outcomes, along with the overall program level outcomes, are all nested within the university level outcomes. So again, this is what we mean when we say that it's nested learning outcomes. They all play a role within each other. This is another way of displaying the nested aspect of the learning outcomes. So a student would need to know these important student learning outcomes for this class, for the course, which then ties in with the overall program. Whatever major they're in, that program, again, each course builds upon itself. They might need a specific SLO, student learning outcome within this course, so that then they can be able to pass this next course. So they need to learn it here within this first course, so that later on in their program, in another course, they'll be able to accomplish this because they've learned the components over here in this other class. So that would then feed into this one, which is all nested within the overall program. That's what it means to be nested, so that it can succeed with the overall aspect of it. Class feeds into the program, the degree, and that has to make sure that it's nested within all the different parts of that university, because there's things that the university wants to ensure that all students gain and learn by going through the courses in the program. So general education would have some specific SLOs as well. That's spread throughout the student's time at the university, as well as the university would have a mission statement, a vision statement of what they want all students to gain. So that would be their overall university SLOs. So that all feeds together in order to have that student get that full degree and have a full understanding of what they need to know in order to succeed. Another big part of the student learning outcomes is that it needs to be at the appropriate cognitive level. Now we need to think about how are we going to develop these SLOs. Now, in many cases, as an instructor, you sort of step into a course. So you're given the SLOs. Even if you have to design a course yourself, lots of times there'll already be a curriculum committee that will have created all the SLOs that are needed for the overall program. So then you'll be given the SLOs. But sometimes it's important for you to develop SLOs, whether you're on a curriculum committee or it's a new course that you're thinking about introducing. So you're trying to identify these things. So we need to understand, how is an SLO actually developed? And that's where Bloom's taxonomy comes in. Bloom's taxonomy addresses all cognitive levels. It's usually broken up with lower order and higher order cognitive levels. Lower order is generally somewhere between remember, understand, and apply. Higher order is generally looked at as around analyze, evaluate, and create. What this means is that you go through as an instructor and identify what level do they need to have in order to pass this course. So what do they need to know? What level? Do they need to know it at the remember level, at the understand level, at the apply, analyze, evaluate, create? Create is the highest because it usually incorporates all of the other aspects within Bloom's taxonomy. The way that we would create an SLO for the student would be that we would use action verbs. With these action verbs, a key aspect when we're creating the SLO is that it's measurable, meaning that as an instructor, we can measure whether the student has learned it at this cognitive level or not. This is a great place where AI can assist us even in the creation process of, an SLO. A great prompt to use is simply asking an AI like ChatGPT to give us some great action verbs to use for each level of Bloom's revised taxonomy. Here you see that it gives us each one of the Bloom's taxonomies, as well as specific action verbs that can be used with that. Here within remember, we can use words such as recall, list, define, identify, name, match, label, locate, state. Within apply, we could say use, demonstrate, solve. Within our actual SLO, we can give some specifics that the student will be able to list 6 of the 10 components associated with this process, something like that, as far as having a component there that's measurable. We can continue to use AI in the creation of our SLOs by prompting it directly to assist us in creating the SLO directly. A prompt such as, based on Bloom's revised taxonomy, what would be a great way to write and evaluate level student learning objective on the topic of, fill in whatever topic you're doing, in a university blank course. So here's where you would put in the type of course that you have. In this way, you can use a prompt to help develop your SLO to begin with by using AI. The important thing is that you can go back and forth and say, revise, do it a different way, or add different levels of detail. Again, the important thing is that you put in the specific topic as well as the specific course that you have in order for the AI to be able to then generate a specific type of SLO. Even if it doesn't create something perfect, it still helps you in that it gives you sort of a structure and it helps you to then go from there. Again, we always want to evaluate what's going on with whatever the AI gives us. This helps us to generate it. And again, this can be applied at every single level. Another really important part in developing our SLOs is that every single course now should have some aspect of AI literacy. Whether that's a specific SLO, which I recommend, but sometimes that could be difficult to get through all the critical processes in making sure that the curriculum committee goes through this process. So it might take a while, but even now as instructors ourselves, we can incorporate this in that we have to have AI literacy within there. It needs to be an overall component of every single course. So with AI literacy, there needs to be the component of awareness that AI is all around us, the important component of capacity, meaning that students know how to use AI in order for them to be able to succeed. And they need to have the knowledge that everyone has access to it, meaning that the instructor has access, students have access, businesses have access, all countries now have access to AI. So we need to think about that because that leads into the fourth aspect, which is critical thinking. Super important for students to understand that this is an important part in order to use AI properly is critical thinking, meaning that we critically evaluate anything that comes from the AI. Whether it looks perfect or not, it still needs to be reviewed, it still needs to be compared, researched to ensure that it's proper, to ensure that it's logical, and then to also think about aspects of bias to make sure that it's giving the full picture. Again, this should be done with anything, whether it's from an AI or a subject matter expert. It should always have this critical review, this critical awareness that we need to make sure that the information is correct, that there aren't any hallucinations or incorrect data that's going on. Along with that, we need to be cognizant of things like, is my data secure? Is privacy issues being addressed? What are the biases associated with the sources of information that the AI used? So that's an important part for this specific aspect of course alignment, which is the SLO. From there, we go directly into assessment strategies. So here is what are we going to do with the assessment in order to ensure that we have full evidence of learning, that learning has truly occurred. Whenever we do these assessments, it needs to be, as much as possible, it needs to match the real world requirements. If I'm training someone to be an engineer, they need to be able to gain the skills needed, the capabilities needed in order to be an engineer in real life. And this needs to honestly show the students' capabilities. In showing the students' honest capabilities, we should be considering whether that's with AI or with not AI. And there I say and or, because yes, we want to develop that student's basic skills in whatever topic, whatever field. They need to have that foundation of being able to do things on their own. They need to know what right looks like, so basic skills. But at the same time, they also need to learn how to work with AI. Those are the requirements right now when they graduate. Right now, we have students graduating, they get to their job, they have to use AI right now. Why? Because so many fields, so many businesses are already using AI, and every field is going to be using it. So they need to have that skill now. So when we create assessments, sure, we should have some assessments where they're not using AI, basic skills. Other assessments should be where they have to use the AI. They have to incorporate that within there. The process of what they're creating or what they're doing should incorporate some AI for some assignments in order to ensure that they gain that skill of using the AI properly. Going back to that aspect of skills, we have to think about the skills that they really need. In the future, there's going to be a lot less use of us creating all of the text ourselves. Why? Because we now have AI that can create so much text for us. But again, we still need that foundational skill in order to see what right looks like. Also, the writing process itself gives us a lot in that we learn in that process, but we also need to incorporate these skills of AI. Now, when we're doing assessment, we have to think about different types of assessment in order to fully evaluate the SLOs. So yes, we can have some traditional tests where it's knowledge mastery. So they're just putting information as far as A, B, C, D, but there's so many other types of assessments that we should definitely consider and incorporate. Dynamic type of assessments, such as giving presentations in class, having to answer questions live from the audience, from other students, from the instructor, being able to incorporate the information that they learn. Now, they could have put that presentation together using AI. The AI could have assisted them in putting it together, but they still need to have that skill of presenting the information, of incorporating that knowledge now within their own mind so that they can answer these questions. So again, it's a mixture that we really need to focus on. Other types of dynamic assessments are also things like going through a case study, doing project-based learning, doing all sorts of different things where it's more dynamic, where they have to be engaged and they have to actually present information, not just solely relying on the AI. Again, incorporating the use, you could have assignments where they have to create a podcast, where they have to create a video. Again, the AI could have been used to help put together these different components, but yet there's still an important aspect of them going through and presenting information, having these different soft skills, power skills that are going to be so much more important going on. So this is an important thing to really consider with this component of overall course alignment, is the assessment aspect. Finally, we have instructional strategies. So this is the pedagogy aspect of course alignment. Now here, we must incorporate assessment strategies for alignment. What does that mean when we're saying that we must incorporate the aspects of the overall assessment strategies? So you have to remember, if I'm teaching you in a certain way, I have to think about how I'm going to actually assess you, because I have to sort of ensure that the students understand that. What's expected of them? How are they going to be judged, assessed, evaluated? So a classic example, there's a great video on YouTube. It's kind of old now. I'll link to it though. But it's really great in that it's an instructor who it's an elective class that he's teaching, right? And he's teaching students traditional dance, old American dances. And the whole time he conducts the instruction, the pedagogy is through lecture. So the entire time the students are being lectured to about, he shows a couple of diagrams with foot placements, but he specifically just gives lectures the entire time. And then at the end of the entire semester, he brings people up, they're in a ballroom, and then he says, okay, now go. That is misalignment to the extreme. Why? Because I am not preparing my students for the actual assessment. So that means if I am going to do some sort of dynamic assessment, such as they have to go up in front of the class and give a presentation, well, I should be doing things like that throughout the semester. I should be doing formative assessments to help them get ready for that summative assessment. So this is when the student would have opportunities to do mini presentations, small presentations, maybe presentations to smaller groups, maybe presentations that are much shorter up in front of the class. Again, they could still use AI to help create that. They could still use AI to gain, put a script together, all these things where we can incorporate the use of AI in our dynamic assessments. But again, it's not solely reliant on that AI. They're still building and developing these other skills. So this is what's an important part here with our course alignment, where we're looking at assessment and we're looking at the pedagogies that we're using to ensure that they're lining up correctly. And all of this really needs to be explicit. It needs to be ensured that the student understands this. Rubrics are a great way to do this so that they can see what's going to be expected, but you need to ensure that they're understanding, hey, we're doing this mini presentation because you're going to be expected to do a big presentation later on. They need to be explicitly understanding that process. As stated, using active student-centered instruction, really hands-on learning, is really the best way to move forward with instructional strategies. And as stated before, we can incorporate technologies like AI whenever it's warranted. And again, when you're using it, you need to explain why it's being used, or when you're specifically telling them, hey, I don't want you to use AI right now. That's perfectly fine. You as the instructor should be empowered to do that because you know best your topic and your students. But now we're in a new phase, a new reality where AI is all around us. So you need to be explicit now as to telling them, why can't you use AI? Why are they not allowed to use it? It's going to become second nature for all students to use AI because that's a tool that's so prevalent and so incorporated into all programs. So you need to be very explicit, and you yourself need to understand, well, why can't they use AI right now? Why shouldn't they use AI? It's important to really think about, because lots of research has come out as far as saying, well, if we use AI so much, we're going to become dependent, we're going to become reliant, and then we're going to lose certain skills, and we're going to have an inability to gain new skills. Why? Because we're so focused on AI. AI is great and very powerful, but again, we still need to have these basic skills. It is going to be important to go through and do some things without AI. You have to be thinking about those things. You have to be incorporating where's the right place for that. And again, making sure that it's explicit. The students know the reasons why. We're not using AI here for this assignment so that you can get basic skills in the mastery. And then we're going to do another assignment where you are going to be using it. So we're going to use these skills to make us even better over here so that you can know what right looks like. Again, being explicit and letting them know. And it's really important to show them examples and show them so that they can see and understand, why are we doing this? Why are we doing it in this way? Relevancy is super important for motivation and should always be expressed. Why are we doing this in general? Why are we covering this topic? How is this going to help me later on? Remember, we talked about the nested aspect of these SLOs. So ensuring that student understands, why is it important now? Why is it important personally for that student? As the instructor, you can continue to use AI in different ways. You can go in and ask an AI like ChatGPT a direct question such as, what would be a great hands-on strategy for addressing this topic? There's lots of different ways that you can use the AI to help you in your course directly. Going along with applied, a great prompt would simply be, what are some good apply level question types from Bloom's revised taxonomy to ask students? Simply put that in and it'll give you a full listing of some great questions that you can ask students for this type of question, for this level of Bloom's revised taxonomy. So now we've put everything together. We have our student learning outcomes. That was first, in order to understand what students should be getting out of this. Those are all measurable. Action verbs, AI was able to help us put that together. We have our assessments. So this is evidence to prove that the students actually learn the SLOs. And how do we do that? That all comes through the pedagogies that we use, the learning activities. What are we going to do in order to ensure that the students know the information and they can actually pass that evaluation, because we've taught it in a way that they're ready to go through that assessment. All of this put together, course alignment, AI was able to help us. And remember, learning is for life.